Before Greece had philosophers or marble temples, before democracy or myth, there were only islands scattered across the Aegean Sea, small dots of rock and promise. Here, humanity began to whisper its first Greek dreams into the wind. On the island of Crete, the Minoan civilization awoke. It wasn't a kingdom of war, but of rhythm, trade, and color. The people built palaces that looked like labyrinths, filled with frescoes of dolphins, dancers, and blooming lilies. Their walls told stories long before letters could. They traded not just goods, but imagination. Ships carried olive oil, pottery, and ideas across the sea, to Egypt, to Anatolia, to places that would later call these travelers the children of light. In the courtyards of Knossos, priests performed rituals that felt more like festivals. Music echoed through columns painted in red and black, and bulls were sacred, symbols of the strength that sustained life rather than destroyed it. What makes the Minoans feel almost unreal is their peace. While much of the world fortified itself behind stone and spear, Crete remained open, unguarded, trusting in the sea. Archaeologists have found no great walls around their cities, no weapons stockpiled for defense. Maybe they believed that their gods, the sea, the earth, the sun, would keep them safe. Maybe they were right, at least for a while. But every wave that kisses the shore eventually pulls back. Around 1700 BCE, the ground beneath Crete trembled. A massive earthquake shook the island, toppling palaces and cracking the frescoes that had danced for centuries. Yet the Minoans rebuilt, stronger than before, and their art flourished again. This time, their influence stretched even further. Their merchants taught others the beauty of pattern. Their builders showed others the rhythm of balance. Their sailors drew invisible threads across the Mediterranean that would never fully fade. Meanwhile, far to the north, another kind of Greece was taking shape. The mainland was rocky, the soil harsher, the weather less forgiving. Here lived a tougher people, the Mycenaeans. If the Minoans were dreamers of the sea, the Mycenaeans were makers of mountains. They built citadels that loomed over the valleys, thick-walled and impenetrable, like the world's first fortresses of ambition. They admired the Minoans, but turned their grace into power. Where the Minoans traded, the Mycenaeans conquered. Their kings ruled from palaces in Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, surrounded by records carved in wet clay, inventory lists, trade routes, names of tribute. The bureaucratic hum of an empire was beginning to rise. Their script, Linear B, was an adaptation of the Minoan language, but this time it spoke of warriors, chariots, and weapons. The age of art was quietly giving way to the age of authority. These were the people who would later become legends, the ancestors of Agamemnon, Achilles, and Odysseus. Their lives, perhaps ordinary, were remembered as extraordinary. When they died, their tombs were sealed with gold masks, their treasures buried with them as if they might need them beyond the veil. Greece was beginning to dream of immortality. By 1600 BCE, both worlds, Crete's grace and Mycenae's power, intertwined. Ships sailed between them, carrying craftsmen and gods alike. The bull of Crete became the bull of Mycenae. The labyrinth of Knossos transformed into the myth of Theseus. It was as if stories were beginning to sprout from the stones themselves. But somewhere, in the whispers of time, a shadow grew. The Mycenaeans rose higher, hungrier, and the balance tipped. Trade became tribute, tribute became war, and by 1450 BCE, the Minoan palaces began to burn. Whether by conquest, rebellion, or nature's wrath, the age of peace slipped beneath the waves. The island that once danced now fell silent, and its language, Linear A, was lost forever. On the mainland, Mycenaean kings took their place as rulers of a world that suddenly felt smaller. They built thrones of stone, carved lions above their gates, and looked out across the sea as if daring the gods to challenge them. For a few shining centuries, Greece was ruled by men who believed themselves almost divine. And then, just as suddenly, it all began to crumble. Around 1200 BCE, the palaces burned once more. The great walls could not save them. The ships stopped sailing, the scribes stopped writing, and the light of civilization dimmed into centuries of quiet. Later generations would look back and call these lost people heroes. They would sing of them as gods in human form. Their battles and voyages turned into epic poetry. But for now, the Aegean was silent. The sea that had once connected worlds became a mirror for the stars, a reminder that everything built by human hands eventually fades, but never completely disappears. Because even as the last Mycenaean citadel fell into ruin, something lingered in the ruins, an echo of order, beauty, and curiosity. The foundation of what would one day be called Greece was set not in marble or myth, but in memory. And as night falls over the Aegean, the story continues, toward an age where myths walk and gods bleed, where the lines between history and legend blur into one endless dream. The ruins still smoke when the myths begin to stir. Out of the fallen stones of the Mycenaean citadels rise stories so luminous they outshine memory itself. This is the age of heroes, an age that may never have existed exactly as told, yet somehow feels more real than history ever could. Picture the mainland scattered with small kingdoms, each ruled by a warlord who believes his house is blessed by the gods. Their names echo across centuries: Agamemnon of Mycenae, Menelaus of Sparta, Odysseus of Ithaca, and Achilles of Thessaly. They lived in a world where bronze glinted like sunlight, and every decision hummed with divine consequence. Daily life was rough, simple, and short. Farmers plowed rocky soil, while soldiers sharpened spears for wars they didn't start. Kings traded alliances like dice, bound by oaths and curses. The Greeks believed their fates were written by the gods, but they never stopped trying to rewrite the script. In this world of pride and prophecy, a single event would bind all the legends together: the Trojan War. It likely began as nothing more than a trade dispute over control of the Aegean routes. But in retelling, it became something far grander, a divine drama sparked by beauty itself. They say it began with Helen, the queen of Sparta, whose face would launch 1,000 ships. When she fled, or was taken, by Paris, Prince of Troy, the kings of Greece gathered their forces to bring her back. Beneath the banners of Agamemnon, ships crowded the sea like silver scales. The expedition may have been real, an assault on a wealthy city near the Dardanelles. But what the poets made of it became eternal. The war lasted 10 years, or maybe 10 generations. Heroes fell like stars. Achilles, unstoppable until struck by fate. Patroclus, the friend who made Achilles human. Hector, noble defender of Troy, who fought not for glory, but for home. The gods watched from Olympus, as flawed and emotional as the mortals below. Athena whispered strategy. Ares screamed for blood. Aphrodite smiled at the chaos she helped ignite. In the end, the Greeks won not through might, but through deceit. The wooden horse rolled through Troy's gates, hollow and waiting. Inside, soldiers crouched in silence as the city celebrated. When night fell, the horse opened, and Troy burned. It was the perfect symbol of Greek genius, victory through imagination, not just muscle. When the smoke cleared, the heroes scattered. Odysseus wandered home for 10 long years, facing monsters and temptations. His story would become the Odyssey, the ultimate metaphor for the human soul trying to find its way back from chaos. But behind every tale of heroism lurked exhaustion. The Mycenaean world had spent itself on war. By the 12th century BCE, the palaces once bright with bronze were empty. Trade collapsed, art stopped, writing disappeared. For hundreds of years, no one etched words into clay or stone. Greece entered what later historians called the Dark Age, but even darkness can be fertile. In this silence, songs survived. Families recited tales by firelight, stories of giants, gods, and clever men. Every generation added a verse, a detail, a lesson. When writing returned centuries later, these memories would be carved into poems like the Iliad and the Odyssey. They weren't just entertainment, they were identity. Through myth, Greece remembered itself. And perhaps that's the secret of the Age of Heroes. It never truly ended. Every age since has had its warriors and dreamers, its glory and its grief. What began as campfire tales became the bedrock of Western imagination. Courage, tragedy, pride, and the eternal struggle between destiny and choice. The war may have burned Troy to ash, but its echoes became immortal. Even now, as you drift towards sleep, you can almost hear the clatter of bronze and the soft lament of Homer's verses carried on the wind. The torches have gone out. Cities that once gleamed with bronze and gold are now silent stones swallowed by weeds. The roads crack, the harbors empty, and for the first time in centuries, Greece forgets how to write its own name. This is the long night of the Greek Dark Age, a time of shadows, silence, and survival. The Mycenaean kings are gone, their fortresses looted and left to crumble. No one records why. Maybe invasions came from across the sea, the mysterious sea peoples striking like storms. Maybe the land itself revolted, famine, drought, rebellion. Or maybe the system just collapsed under its own weight. Too much glory balanced on too little grain. Whatever the cause, the world that sang of heroes suddenly stopped singing. For nearly 400 years, Greece drifts in quiet. Villages replace kingdoms. Families huddle together on hillsides, building small wooden homes where palaces once stood. They farm, they herd, they trade what little they can. The art of writing, the proud linear bee, disappears completely. History pauses. All that's left are stories whispered around fires. And yet, there's something strangely beautiful in the stillness. Without great kings or massive walls, the people rediscover what it means to belong to the land itself. Communities grow tight-knit, shaped by memory instead of monuments. Old myths mutate and merge. The tales of Achilles and Odysseus are no longer propaganda for empires. They're lullabies for survival. Out of this darkness, a few small sparks begin to flicker. Farmers become traders again. Sailors brave the coasts, rediscovering the islands once ruled by the Minoans. In scattered places like Lefkandi, archaeologists find graves that hint at rising wealth, ornaments of gold, imported goods, signs that life is stirring. And somewhere, around the 9th century BCE, an invisible revolution begins. The Greeks meet the Phoenicians, the master traders of the Mediterranean, and borrow from them something extraordinary, a new way to write. Simpler, faster, flexible. The alphabet. The Greeks reshape it to their own rhythm, giving birth to the first true written Greek. For the first time in centuries, words find a way back onto the page. With words comes remembrance. The stories that had been passed down by memory alone now find permanence. The poets, the Aoidoi, begin to sing again, not for kings, but for the people. Around campfires and market squares, a blind bard named Homer is said to wander, stitching centuries of legend into epic verse. Whether Homer was one man or many, the voice matters more than the name. Through him, the old world wakes. When he recites the opening lines of the Iliad, something profound happens. The Greek people, scattered and half forgotten, suddenly recognize themselves. They are no longer the lost children of ruin. They are heirs to heroes. Their language, their faith, their courage, their humor, all rediscovered in verse. And just like that, the dawn begins to rise again over the Aegean. Villages turn into towns. Trade routes reweave across the sea. Iron tools replace bronze, bringing sharper edges, stronger plows, and better ships. The simple pottery of the dark centuries evolves into new geometric designs, patterns that pulse with rhythm and intention, like heartbeat and breath. Out of the ruins of Mycenae and the myths of Troy, a new kind of Greece takes shape. Not an empire, not yet, but a community of voices learning to speak again. Each island, each valley, begins to define itself. Small experiments in governance, religion, and pride. The idea of the polis, the city-state, starts here, in the embers of what was lost. The Dark Age wasn't truly dark. It was a pause, a breath before the great exhale of civilization. The Greeks lost their kings, but found their words. They lost their fortresses, but discovered their stories. And that, perhaps, was the trade they needed to make. When dawn finally breaks, it brings with it the hum of rebirth. The temples begin to rise again. The first Olympic Games are whispered about. The rhythm of life returns, stronger, wiser, quieter. Greece steps out of its shadow, carrying two things that will define it forever: memory and imagination. The sun returns to Greece, and with it, the world begins to hum again. The silence of centuries breaks under the rhythm of hammers and the laughter of merchants. From the ashes of the Dark Age rises something extraordinary, a civilization reborn from memory and imagination. This is the Archaic Age, when Greece learns not only to rebuild, but to dream with precision. Across the rocky mainland and its scattering of islands, new city-states begin to take shape. They call them poleis, each one a small world of its own, fiercely independent, yet bound by language, belief, and the endless horizon of the Aegean. There is Athens, still humble, perched upon its acropolis of limestone and hope. There is Sparta, disciplined and hard, surrounded by fertile valleys and the sound of marching feet. There is Corinth, wealthy from trade, its harbors swelling with ships and silver. Each city is a microcosm, an experiment in how humans might live together without kings. Power is debated, tested, reshaped. Councils meet, assemblies argue. Citizens learn the strange new habit of speaking freely. The Greeks invent politics not from luxury, but from necessity, because no single ruler can hold a city of equals. They invent philosophy because they dare to ask why. The gods, once distant and towering, are now part of daily life. Zeus watches from Olympus, but so does Athena from her temple, Apollo from his sanctuary, Poseidon from the deep. Religion and reason walk hand in hand. Festivals bring cities together. Songs of competition and worship fill the air. The first Olympic Games are born, not a spectacle of profit, but a ritual of unity. For a few days, every 4 years, all wars stop, all rivals rest, and the Greeks remember they are one people. Art blossoms again. Potters paint myths on vases with bold black figures that tell stories in silhouette. Sculptors carve stone that seems to breathe. The human body, once hidden behind armor, becomes the center of beauty. Muscles, proportion, symmetry, all become symbols of divine order. To be human, in Greece, is to be something sacred, and in the midst of this rebirth comes poetry. Homer's epics, once oral tales, are written down, binding the new Greece to its heroic past. The Iliad and Odyssey become the cultural spine of a people still figuring out who they are. Then comes Hesiod, a farmer poet who writes not of kings, but of toil, justice, and the rhythm of work. From him, Greece inherits its conscience. But the most revolutionary thing to emerge in this age isn't art or war. It's the idea of the individual. For the first time, a person isn't defined by their birth, but by their choices. Citizens begin to see themselves not as subjects, but as participants. Freedom becomes both privilege and burden. Still, the balance is fragile. The Greek world is not a single empire, but a web of rivals. Hundreds of city-states, each convinced of its own greatness. They trade, they argue, they fight, and they compete for glory in all things. In games, in theater, in ideas. This competition, Aegean, as they call it, fuels progress. It also sows the seeds of future wars. In Athens, reforms begin that will echo through eternity. A lawgiver named Solon abolishes debt slavery and gives every citizen a voice, however small, in government. Later, Cleisthenes reorganizes the city, laying the foundation for something radical: democracy. It's imperfect, messy, limited to free men, but it's alive. The idea that ordinary people can govern themselves has been set loose upon the world. Meanwhile, in Sparta, a different vision takes hold. The state raises children from birth, molding them into soldiers. Freedom is traded for unity, comfort for discipline. Sparta becomes a mirror held up to Athens. Two philosophies, two destinies. One values the mind, the other the body. One dreams, the other endures. Both define Greece. Trade expands beyond the Aegean. Greek ships reach the shores of Italy, Egypt, and Asia Minor. Colonies sprout along distant coasts. Little Greeces in foreign lands, spreading language, art, and ambition. The Mediterranean becomes a Greek lake of ideas, connected by the pulse of commerce and the need to explore. And yet, in every harbor and temple, there's an undercurrent of unease. The Persians, vast and organized, loom in the east, an empire so powerful it could swallow Greece whole. For now, the Greeks live and build, unaware that the age of rebirth is about to be tested by fire. The archaic period closes with a sense of momentum, of awakening. In the echo of Homer's lines, in the laughter of festivals, in the debates of citizens beneath open skies, Greece begins to realize what it truly is. Not a land, not a people, but an idea. An idea that beauty and reason can coexist, that freedom can be built from chaos, and that even the smallest city can change the course of the world. The stage is set for the first great drama of Greece, a small, divided people standing against the largest empire the world has ever known. From the east comes the roar of Persia, an empire that stretches from India to Egypt, rich, disciplined, and endless. To the Persians, Greece is a scattering of quarrelsome tribes, a distant shore barely worth conquering. To the Greeks, Persia is a storm of gold and soldiers, a machine that could erase them overnight. It begins quietly, almost accidentally, in Ionia, along the coast of Asia Minor. Greek colonies there, ruled by Persian governors, rise in rebellion. They send a desperate call across the sea to their cousins in Athens for help. The Athenians, bold and untested, answer. Their ships burn the Persian city of Sardis, and in that single act, they light a fire that will change the world. The Persian king Darius I is enraged. He vows revenge. To him, Athens is a gnat biting the hand of a god. He sends his armies west, across the sea, confident that a show of force will crush this insolence. But in 490 BCE, on the plain of Marathon, something impossible happens. A Persian army of tens of thousands lands on Greek soil. The Athenians stand against them. 10,000 citizen soldiers, farmers and potters holding shields instead of plows. There are no kings among them, no professional warriors, just free men defending their home. Against all odds, they charge. Bronze meets silk, discipline meets arrogance, and by sunset, the invincible Persians are in retreat. The victory shocks the world. It isn't just a battle, it's a statement. A small democracy has defeated an empire. The runner Phidippides is said to race back to Athens to announce the triumph, gasping the word, "We are victorious," before collapsing. Marathon becomes more than a place. It becomes a symbol of what free people can do when they fight for themselves. But Persia does not forget. A decade later, Xerxes, the son of Darius, returns with an army so vast it shakes the earth. Bridges are built across seas. Food is shipped ahead for months. The invasion is a spectacle of power. Greece, fractured as ever, is forced to make a choice: unite or vanish. And so, for the first time, the cities stand together. Sparta takes command on land. Athens rules the sea. It's a fragile alliance of rivals, bound not by love, but by necessity. As the Persians march through northern Greece, they find their path blocked at a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. There, 300 Spartans and a few thousand allies stand against the tide. Their king, Leonidas, knows he cannot win. That's not the point. For 3 days, they hold the line, fighting with calm precision until every last one of them falls. Their sacrifice becomes legend, a reminder that courage can outlive victory. As the land burns, Athens is evacuated. Its people flee to the island of Salamis, watching their empty city consumed by fire. But the Athenians are not finished. Their leader, Themistocles, lures the Persian navy into the narrow straits of Salamis, where numbers mean nothing and skill means everything. Greek triremes, sleek, deadly ships rowed by free citizens, smash the Persian fleet to pieces. When dawn breaks, the sea is littered with broken oars and drifting bodies. The empire that claimed the world has been humbled by a handful of islands and mountains. The Persians retreat, never to return in force. The victory binds Greece together, but only for a heartbeat. Out of unity grows pride, and out of pride, rivalry. Athens, now confident and wealthy, rebuilds in marble and light. Under Pericles, it becomes the beacon of art, philosophy, and democracy. Its navy rules the Aegean. Its culture dazzles the world. The Parthenon rises over the city like a promise to the gods and to humanity itself. Sparta watches from afar, unimpressed. To them, Athens is soft, decadent, too clever for its own good. The Spartans return home to their fields and drills, content to let history remember them in silence. Yet the silence is uneasy. The seeds of future conflict are already taking root. For now, Greece basks in its triumph. The philosophers dream, the dramatists write, the sculptors carve. They believe they've discovered the formula for greatness: balance between freedom and order, beauty and strength. But the human heart never stays in balance for long. The Persian Wars proved that unity could make Greece invincible. The next century will prove that division can destroy it just as easily. The smoke of war clears, and what rises from it isn't ruin, it's brilliance. Athens, once a city of stone and fear, now glows like a flame against the Aegean sky. The Persians are gone. The gods seem pleased, and the Athenians, with a mix of arrogance and awe, decide to build a world worthy of their victory. Under the leadership of Pericles, the city becomes a masterpiece in motion. Marble gleams where ashes once lay. The Parthenon, built for Athena, towers over the Acropolis, a temple of perfect proportion, every column slightly curved to fool the eye into seeing absolute symmetry. Artists, philosophers, playwrights, and scientists flood the streets. To walk through Athens in this age is to stroll through the heartbeat of civilization itself. It isn't just architecture that defines the Golden Age, it's the mindset. The Athenians believed that beauty, truth, and reason aren't the property of gods, but of human beings. They debate in the Agora, their open marketplace of ideas, where every citizen has the right to speak. Imagine it: farmers, poets, generals, all arguing under the same sun about justice, virtue, and destiny. Democracy, still imperfect, begins to pulse with life. Philosophy is no longer just a luxury, it's a necessity. Socrates walks barefoot through the city, asking questions that unnerve everyone. What is good? What is courage? What is truth? He doesn't give answers. He teaches people how to think. His students will carry those thoughts far beyond Athens, planting the seeds of reason that will one day define the West. In the theaters carved into the hillsides, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides turn myth into mirror. Their plays expose the raw nerves of humanity: pride, love, vengeance, guilt. Crowds weep, cheer, and debate what it means to be human. It's storytelling, not for entertainment, but for enlightenment. Artists study the body as if it were a divine equation. Sculptors like Phidias capture motion in stillness, muscles that breathe, eyes that seem to think. Every statue is a prayer in marble, not to the gods, but to potential. The human form becomes the measure of all things. Beyond the city walls, Athens leads the Delian League, a coalition of Greek states formed to defend against Persia. But the alliance slowly turns into an empire. Tribute flows into Athens from across the Aegean, ships of silver, gold, and grain. The city grows rich, powerful, proud. The Parthenon itself is built with the wealth of others, and not everyone is blind to the irony. For a while, no one cares. Athens feels untouchable, a beacon of light surrounded by darkness. Its navy dominates the seas. Its culture defines excellence. Foreigners come to learn, to trade, to marvel. The Athenian citizen sees himself as part of something larger, something immortal. But perfection is heavy, and the higher Athens climbs, the more fragile it becomes. Beneath the marble lies ambition, jealousy, and fear. Sparta, stoic and watchful, begins to resent Athenian arrogance. The other city-states whisper of tyranny disguised as democracy. They see Athens not as the champion of Greece, but as its ruler. Inside the city, even the glow of genius casts shadows. Philosophers question gods. Dramatists challenge power. Generals thirst for glory. The democracy that gave Athens its strength also feeds its restlessness. In taverns and assemblies, voices rise. Should we expand, conquer, control? The dream of freedom begins to blur into the desire for dominance. And still, art blooms. The tragedies grow deeper, the questions sharper. Socrates keeps walking, keeps asking, as if he senses what's coming, that every golden age eventually burns itself out. By the end of the 5th century, Athens shines brighter than any city before it. But the cracks are showing. Pride turns into hubris. Power becomes greed. Across the Peloponnesus, Sparta sharpens its spears. The peace that victory bought begins to splinter under the weight of ego. The Golden Age was never meant to last. It was a flash, the brief moment when humanity touched perfection and mistook it for permanence. What follows will test every ideal Athens ever stood for. The marble of Athens still gleams, but beneath the shine, the cracks are widening. What began as brilliance has turned brittle. Pride whispers where wisdom once spoke, and Greece, united against Persia not long ago, now turns its fury inward. This is the Peloponnesian War, a 30-year struggle that will undo everything the Golden Age built. It begins, as many tragedies do, with fear disguised as honor. Athens, drunk on its own power, rules the Aegean through its navy and its money. City-states that once joined freely in alliance now pay tribute like subjects. Sparta, watching from its quiet valleys, feels the insult in every silver coin sent to Athens. The Spartans are soldiers of habit, wary of change, suspicious of words like freedom and art. To them, Athens has become arrogant, a city that talks too much and remembers too little of discipline. The tension snaps when allies of both sides clash over trade and pride. Arguments in assembly halls turn to declarations of war. In 431 BCE, Sparta marches north with its armies. Athens retreats behind its massive walls, trusting in its fleet and its leader, Pericles. At first, the strategy works. Athens cannot be taken by land, and Sparta cannot be beaten at sea. But war has a way of finding the cracks. Within the crowded walls of Athens, disease spreads, a plague that kills 1/3 of the population, including Pericles himself. The city that once glowed with reason becomes a place of despair. Bodies burn by the thousands. Faith shatters. Democracy, once the pride of Athens, begins to falter under panic and rage. Leaders rise and fall in quick succession. Some promise victory, others revenge. Generals like Alcibiades, brilliant and reckless, leap between loyalties. He persuades Athens to attack Syracuse, a Spartan ally far away in Sicily. A gamble that could have won the war or doomed the city. It does the latter. The Athenian fleet is trapped and destroyed, its soldiers slaughtered or enslaved. The empire that once ruled the seas is left gasping for air. Sparta, patient and merciless, keeps pressing. With Persian gold funding its navy, it finally matches Athens ship for ship. Battles flare across the Aegean. Cities switch sides. Friends betray friends. What began as a war of principle descends into chaos and cruelty. By 404 BCE, Athens is starving. Its walls are blockaded, its allies gone, its navy sunk. When the gates finally open, the conquerors enter quietly. Sparta does not burn the city. It simply strips away its pride. The democracy is dismantled, replaced by a puppet oligarchy, the 30 tyrants. And the empire that once defined freedom now kneels. Yet even in defeat, Athens refuses to die. The spirit that built the Parthenon and questioned the gods survives the ashes. Within a few years, democracy is restored. The philosophers continue to argue. The dramatists keep writing. The war, though devastating, leaves behind something unexpected. a lesson written in pain, that greatness without humility is self-destruction. Across Greece, the cost is immense. Thousands dead, generations scarred, the faith in unity shattered. Sparta stands victorious but hollow, ruling a land too broken to admire its discipline. The rest of Greece will never again be the same. Out of this exhaustion, a quiet weariness settles over the land. The age of heroes and ideals gives way to cynicism and survival. But history never stays still for long. In the north, beyond the old battlefields, a new power watches and waits, Macedon, led by kings who've studied Greek genius and Greek folly alike. The war is over, but Greece feels hollow. Its temples still stand, its poets still sing, yet the confidence that once electrified every word and marble column has vanished. The Peloponnesian War didn't just end an era, it broke something in the Greek soul. The heroes of Marathon and Salamis are now ghosts. The city-states, once beacons of freedom, glare at each other across empty fields. Athens, stripped of empire, limps back into life. Its people rebuild what they can, teaching, debating, dreaming, but always with a shadow at the edge of their pride. Sparta, the victor, rules without joy. Its discipline has become its prison. For a brief moment, it stands supreme, then begins to fade, undone by the same forces that once destroyed Athens: arrogance and exhaustion. In this vacuum, new powers rise and fall like waves. Thebes, under the leadership of Epaminondas, challenges Sparta and wins at Leuctra, shattering the myth of Spartan invincibility. But even Thebes, bright for a heartbeat, cannot hold the flame. The cities of Greece are trapped in a cycle: alliances, betrayals, brief triumphs, and endless wars. The dream of unity that began with the Persian threat has become impossible. And while the great cities bleed each other dry, in the rugged hills of the north, a kingdom quietly prepares to change everything. Macedon, once dismissed as barbaric and crude, begins to grow under the rule of a brilliant, ambitious man, Philip II. Philip isn't just a warrior, he's a student of Greek failure. As a young man, he lived among the Thebans, studying their tactics, their politics, their arrogance. He returns home determined to do what no Greek city ever could: unite them all, not as partners, but as subjects. Through diplomacy, bribery, marriage, and war, Philip transforms Macedonia from a tribal kingdom into a disciplined machine. His army is unlike anything Greece has seen. Long spears called sarissas, tight phalanx formations that move like a single body, cavalry that strikes like lightning. Every campaign teaches him more about control, speed, and power. One by one, the city-states fall or bend to his will. Athens protests but hesitates to fight. Thebes resists and is crushed. By 338 BCE, at the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip's forces defeat the combined armies of Athens and Thebes. For the first time in history, all of Greece stands under one ruler. Not a coalition, not a league, a kingdom. It should have been the end of Greece's story, but fate has other plans. In the crowd that day, among the Macedonian soldiers, stands a young man watching his father's victory: Alexander, Philip's son. He's barely 20, but his eyes already see beyond Greece, beyond the Aegean, beyond everything his father ever dreamed of. For now, Philip builds. He plans an invasion of Persia, not for revenge, but for conquest. The Greeks, exhausted and resentful, agree to follow. They call it a crusade to avenge the old wars, but deep down, they know it's submission dressed as unity. Still, they sign on, because Philip's promise burns brighter than their memories. Then, in 336 BCE, at a festival celebrating his triumph, Philip walks into the theater in Aegean and is struck down by an assassin's blade. The crowd screams. The empire trembles. For a moment, it seems everything will collapse again, but it doesn't, because Alexander steps forward, calm, composed, ready. He's young, untested, but there's something in him that silences every doubt. The generals bow, the nobles swear loyalty, and within weeks, the boy becomes king. He inherits his father's army, his plans, and his fire, but his vision is far greater. Greece, weary from centuries of division, suddenly finds itself under a leader who believes he can conquer not just nations, but the world itself. The world holds its breath. Greece has a new king, young, fierce, and unrelenting. Alexander of Macedon, son of Philip, steps into the throne at 20, his father's blood barely dry. The generals doubt him, the nobles whisper, and the Greek cities stir with rebellion. But Alexander doesn't hesitate. He moves like lightning, decisive, ruthless, brilliant. Within months, every revolt is crushed. The boy becomes a legend before his crown even settles. He was educated by the philosopher Aristotle, taught that reason and conquest are not opposites but partners, that to rule the world, one must first understand it. From his father, he learned tactics. From his teacher, vision. He carries both like twin blades. His ambition is vast, to finish what Philip began and to go even further, to conquer Persia, the empire that once threatened Greece and still rules half the known world. In 334 BCE, Alexander marches east with 30,000 men, in a dream so enormous it defies sense. He crosses the Hellespont, tossing a spear into the soil of Asia as a symbol. "I claim you," he says, "for Greece." Every step after that is history unraveling at impossible speed. At the Battle of Granicus, he meets the Persian satraps head-on. His phalanx locks shields, his cavalry charges like thunder, and the Persians crumble. At Issus, he faces the great King Darius III himself and wins again, forcing him to flee, leaving his family behind. Alexander treats them with respect, even kindness. Part conqueror, part philosopher. He is not content to destroy. He wants to rule, to absorb, to transform. Every victory feeds the myth. His men follow him into lands no Greek has ever seen, across deserts, over mountains, through rivers that seem endless. Cities fall, then rise again under new names. Alexandria, Alexandropolis, echoes of his ego carved into the map. He becomes more than a king. He becomes an idea. When he enters Egypt, he is welcomed as a liberator. The priests crown him pharaoh. He visits the oracle at Siwa, where he's told he's not just a man, but the son of Zeus Ammon. Maybe he believes it. Maybe he always did. From that moment, his destiny is no longer mortal. In 331 BCE, at Gaugamela, he faces Darius one final time. The Persian army is massive, perhaps the largest the world has seen. Chariots, elephants, endless ranks. But Alexander's strategy is flawless. He rides straight into the heart of the enemy line, cutting through chaos, unstoppable. When the dust clears, Persia is broken. Darius flees and is later killed by his own men. Alexander weeps when he finds the body, mourning the man he meant to defeat, not destroy. Now there is no rival left. He takes Babylon, Susa, Persepolis, the jewels of Asia. The old empire burns behind him, and in its ashes, he begins to build a new one, a fusion of East and West. He marries a Persian princess, adopts local customs, and encourages his men to do the same. The Greeks grumble, confused. Their general, their god king, is becoming something else, something they can't name. But Alexander is restless. He cannot stop. The horizon calls like a siren. He marches farther east, into Bactria, then into India, chasing legends of monsters and miracles. At the Hydaspes River, he faces King Porus, who fights with elephants towering like living fortresses. The battle is brutal, but Alexander wins again, barely. He spares Porus and makes him an ally. Yet even in victory, his men begin to break. Years of marching, of endless conquest, have worn them down. When Alexander orders them to go farther still, to the edge of the world, they refuse. For the first time, he meets resistance not from enemies, but from those who love him. Reluctantly, he turns back. On the journey home, something in him begins to fade. His closest friend, Hephaestion, dies, and the conqueror who faced armies without flinching weeps like a child. Grief cracks the god within him. He becomes paranoid, erratic, drinking heavily, executing friends he suspects of betrayal. The dream that once lifted him now begins to devour him. In 323 BCE, at the height of his power, Alexander falls ill in Babylon. The details are still debated: fever, poison, exhaustion. For days he lies silent, surrounded by his generals, unable to speak. When asked who should inherit his empire, he whispers, "To the strongest." Then the voice of history goes quiet. He dies at 32, having conquered everything from Greece to India. No man before or after would ever do the same. His body is placed in gold, his empire carved apart by the very generals who swore loyalty to him. And yet, in death, Alexander wins a different kind of immortality. His cities thrive. His legend spreads. The worlds he joined, Greek and Persian, East and West, begin to mix, birthing the Hellenistic Age, a time of science, art, and philosophy that will echo for centuries. When Alexander dies, the world holds its breath again and then fractures. The empire he built with impossible speed shatters overnight. His generals, once brothers in arms, turn on each other like wolves circling a fallen lion. Greece's dream of unity dies with him, but the ideas he spread take root everywhere they land. Across Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Asia Minor, new kingdoms rise. The Hellenistic kingdoms, each ruled by one of Alexander's successors, the Diadochi. Ptolemy claims Egypt and builds a dynasty that will last for centuries. Its final ruler, a queen named Cleopatra. Seleucus takes the east, stretching from Syria to Persia. Antigonus and his line rule Macedonia and Greece itself. The empire is gone, but the Greek world has never been larger. Everywhere, Greek language becomes the thread that ties the world together. Traders in Alexandria speak the same tongue as philosophers in Athens and soldiers on the banks of the Indus. The alphabet that was once whispered in darkness now carries science, literature, and law across continents. For the first time, knowledge travels faster than armies. The city of Alexandria becomes the crown of this new world, a place where East and West truly meet. Its library gathers scrolls from every civilization, a temple to the human mind. Scholars there measure the earth, chart the stars, dissect the body, and debate the nature of the soul. In marble halls filled with lamplight, men like Euclid, Archimedes, and Eratosthenes push reason to its limits. The world becomes something new, rational, measurable, infinite. Art changes too. The perfection of the classical age gives way to realism, emotion, movement. Statues no longer stand still. They breathe, twist, struggle. Gods look more human, and humans more divine. The old symmetry of Athens is replaced by passion. beauty found not in balance, but in truth. Religion and philosophy blur together. Stoics preach virtue through self-control. Epicureans seek peace through understanding. Skeptics question everything. The Greeks, scattered yet connected, begin to study life itself as a craft. How to live, how to think, how to die well. And in that searching, something extraordinary happens. Greece, though conquered by Rome, ends up conquering Rome in spirit. When Roman-sized soldiers march into Greece, they kneel before its statues. When they build their empire, they borrow Greek gods, Greek architecture, Greek ideals. Latin becomes the language of power, but Greek remains the language of wisdom. Centuries roll forward, empires rise and fall, but the Greek flame never dies. It hides in monasteries, flickers in scholars' hands, leaps again during the Renaissance, when artists and thinkers rediscover Plato and Aristotle and realize that the questions of 2,000 years ago are still our questions. What is beauty? What is truth? What is the good life? Even now, when you look at a courthouse, a university, or a stage, you see echoes of Greece. The columns, the debates, the tragedies, the belief that ideas can outlast empires. They all come from those islands scattered across a sunlit sea. The democracy that stumbled through Athens' dusty streets, the logic born from Socratic doubt, the poetry that turned war into art, all of it shaped the way the modern world thinks. Greece's legacy isn't a ruin or a relic, it's a mirror. Every time humanity rebuilds, it finds its reflection there. The reminder that progress and pride, reason and passion, art and war are threads of the same tapestry. And when the world feels chaotic, when civilizations seem to fall asleep again, Greece whispers from the past, "Wake up, remember, rebuild." Because that's what it always did. Fall, dream, rise. The marble may crack, the temples may crumble, but the ideas never die. They rest for a while, waiting for someone, perhaps you, to listen.